She was a poor girl. Leanne immediately ran toward the house to see what was happening inside. The student was locking the door as best as he could. The girl was one of the village residents, and they were making a deal. The student would give her food, and in return, she would help him with certain things that she understood. As the room's temperature started to rise, Leanne arrived outside and heard voices from within. She broke down the door and, upon entering, saw the two helping each other. The sight made her furious. The student argued that he was already an adult and had his own needs, so Leanne should understand what was happening. He insisted that he wasn't forcing anyone into this, and the girl agreed that it was true. Leanne then took the food that had been given to them and crushed it in her hands. Was this what she had fought so hard for, to feed them? The boy, now angry, shouted that Leanne only needed to find them food and not interfere in their personal matters. Despite her rage, Leanne's student asked her to leave and not disturb them. Eventually, Leanne relented and walked out of the room. Zhang Yi was already waiting outside and remarked that reality could be cruel. Leanne felt confused and asked if Zhang Yi thought she was being naive. She felt sad and started to believe that maybe she truly was. Zhang Yi reassured her that he wasn't judging her, even though he disagreed with what had happened. His words only deepened Leanne's sadness, and she said she needed some time alone. Chun Yang, curious about what had happened, asked Zhang Yi, who then explained Leanne's feelings. Upon hearing this, Chun was shocked. Leanne locked herself in her room, reflecting on how she had acted foolishly all this time. Everything she had done now felt meaningless. Before long, Zhang Yi knocked on the door and asked if she was all right. Leanne responded that she just needed some time and would return to work soon. However, Zhang Yi stated that nothing was more important than her well-being. He had come because he was worried about her. Hearing that he was concerned made Leanne's cheeks flush. Zhang Yi then asked if he could come in to talk, and Leanne allowed it. He sat on the bed and told her that he understood this was a heavy blow, but he hoped she could rise above it and move forward. There was still a long road ahead. He added that if Leanne ever had any problems in the future, she could always talk to him, he would always be there to listen. Leanne then asked if Zhang Yi thought she was a fool beyond saving. With a sincere smile, Zhang Yi admitted that she was a little naive but that he understood why she had placed so much hope in those people. Opening up, Leanne shared her past. She had trained in martial arts since childhood, dedicating her entire life to it. She had once dreamed of becoming a TV star or someone important, but being a woman had always been an obstacle to her standing out. One day, she chose to leave martial arts behind and become a personal bodyguard. She recalled that it was the most glorious time of her life. Years later, she became famous for her work and was eventually recruited by the academy to serve as a physical education teacher while also protecting wealthy and noble students. Leanne became sorrowful as she explained that all of her happiness was now just a memory. When the apocalypse came, she lost everything, and the only thing left was her responsibility to protect the students. That duty was the only thing that kept her going. Zhang Yi then told her that she had burdened herself too much. Furthermore, she was no longer alone. Now, she had friends who could be her family. Everyone in their shelter was different from the students she had protected before. Zhang Yi took Leanne's hand and told her that she needed new motivation. He suggested that she could make him her new motivation. Hearing those words, Leanne felt even more embarrassed, and her face grew hot. She quickly pulled her hand away and admitted that she was feeling a little better. However, she also confessed that she was disappointed in the student's lack of growth and maturity. Then, she stood up and left the room, leaving Zhang Yi to reflect. Shortly after, Zhang Yi found Shinsen in the living room. Shinsen asked if Zhang Yi had devoured his teacher in her room. Zhang Yi simply replied that he wasn't interested in his teacher's body. Shinsen refused to believe him and insisted that Leanne was very beautiful. Zhang Yi acknowledged that Leanne was indeed beautiful but also incredibly troublesome. Then, Zhang Yi whispered into Shinsen's ear, saying that at least now, Leanne would no longer see the students the same way she did before. Zhang Yi proceeded to recount what he had witnessed in the cabin regarding the incident with one of her students. After hearing the story, Shinsen declared that they were truly disgusting. Zhang Yi then suggested that the best course of action was to convince Leanne to leave those people behind, after which he could eliminate them all without hesitation. Shinsen wholeheartedly supported this idea and offered to help. These events left Zhang Yi feeling very satisfied. Now, he was ready to search for materials. Pamanyu wanted to assist, but Zhang Yi replied that only a small mutant cat was needed for the task. Karen eagerly awaited orders from her commander. Zhang Yi playfully pinched Karen's nose and told her she was both sweet and mischievous. Karen felt that she looked beautiful in her uniform, and Zhang Yi agreed, making her blush. Then, Zhang Yi handed her a weapon for self-defense and asked if she knew how to use it. Ken nodded, and they prepared to continue their mission. Along the way, Ken wanted to know what had happened with Leanne. He then asked why Ken hated the other student so much. Ken replied that he didn't want those people near him, he didn't even want to live close to them or see them from a distance. Zhang stated that he also disliked that type of person and assured Ken that soon, they would stop bothering him. They only let them into the base in case of an attack, merely to satisfy Leanne. But before that, they had to make Leanne give up on her desire to protect those people. Ken then said that Leanne had a very soft heart, so much so that she might end up bringing those people into the shelter even if she didn't want to. Zhang replied that now everything depended on Karen and Shin. He assured Karen that Leanne cared more about the two of them than she did about the other students. With enthusiasm, Ken asked if he and Shin needed to win Leanne's heart. Zhang nodded, saying that if they put in the effort, they could take up all the space in their teacher's heart and drive the students out. As they approached the factory, they noticed a group of vehicles ahead. Zhang Yi observed them through binoculars and saw that the cars were modified to travel on snow, equipped with weapons mounted on their roofs. Karen, curious about what he saw, took a look for herself. Zhang Yi analyzed the situation, realizing that facing them without knowing their full capabilities or who they were could be dangerous. While he was thinking, Karen pointed out that the vehicles were off-road cars modified for snow travel, making their performance very poor. She explained that they could only go about 20 kilometers per hour and consumed 5 times more fuel than a normal vehicle due to their weight. This information surprised Zhang Yi, and he asked if she was certain. Karen confirmed it was true. However, Zhang Yi quickly realized that in times like these, fuel was incredibly scarce. If they had come this far using such inefficient vehicles, it meant they were running dangerously low on fuel. Zhang Yi suspected that they came from the Xing base. Karen asked why they would come from there, given that the Xing base was very far from this location. Zhang Yi replied that a battle was likely to break out, so Karen needed to be prepared. Zhang Yi then approached the group of vehicles, and soon enough, they noticed his presence. He instructed Karen to remain inside the car while he stepped out with his hands raised, declaring that he came in peace and was not a threat. The men did not attack. When they saw the emblem on his uniform, they recognized it as the insignia of the Shirshan base, which had already been destroyed. They whispered among themselves, wondering how someone could have survived in such a place. One of them even commented that Zhang Yi had a nice uniform, so he must have held a high rank. Another suggested that if Zhang Yi had managed to survive, he must have incredible strength, as he showed no fear despite being surrounded by armed enemies. Hearing this, one of the men said that Zhang Yi should speak to their captain when he returned and that he could wait there. Zhang Yi agreed to the suggestion. Not long after, he saw some of them entering a warehouse through the roof, just as he would have done, descending with ropes from the ceiling. Then, a man who appeared to be the captain of the group emerged. Zhang Yi immediately realized that if this man wasn't a mutant, then he must be incredibly strong. The captain approached Zhang Yi and asked if he was truly a member of the Shirshan base. Zhang Yi introduced himself as the captain of the Shirshan Special Operations Team. Hearing this, the man nodded, saying that it explained why Zhang Yi had the courage to come alone and speak with them. The captain then firmly asked what Zhang Yi's real purpose was in coming here. Did he intend to drive them all away? He explained that Shirshan base had already been destroyed and that they were no longer strong enough to fight the Xing base. He warned Zhang Yi not to have any reckless ideas. However, Zhang Yi calmly responded that this base was merely a material production factory. If the Xing base wanted resources, they were free to take as much as they wanted. But Zhang Yi also stated that he needed to take some supplies as well, as this territory still belonged to his base. The rival captain agreed to Zhang Yi's request and gave him 30 minutes to collect what he needed. Zhang Yi was satisfied with the deal they had made. Zhang Yi then asked Karen to follow him. Karen felt embarrassed because of how close she was to Zhang Yi, but she quickly regained focus and asked if it was safe to leave their car unattended. Zhang Yi reassured her that it was fine, but the real reason was that he didn't want to reveal his strength in front of others. They continued their journey toward the factory. As they were occupied, Captain Gowan suddenly drew his weapon and fired at Zhang Yi. However, the mutant cat immediately shielded them. It swiftly transformed into a giant form and blocked all the bullets. Even though the soldiers were terrified of the monstrous creature, they did not stop firing. The captain ordered his troops to aim for its eyes. As the gunfire focused on the mutant cat's face, the creature attacked the soldiers. In an instant, it managed to grab the first of its prey. The remaining soldiers injected themselves with a special serum, entering a combat mode that made them grow larger and more muscular. Zhang Yi realized that this was a substance used to enhance their combat abilities. With that, the mutant cat fought fiercely against 3 enhanced soldiers. They managed to hold their ground against the giant beast. Meanwhile, Zhang Yi and Karen observed the battle. Suddenly, someone sneaked up behind them and fired from behind. Zhang Yi reacted quickly, turning around and blocking the attack with a portal. Captain Gowan now realized that Zhang Yi was a mutant. After being attacked, Zhang Yi no longer hid his power and decided to go on the offensive. He fired several bullets at his enemies and declared that this would be the end for them. Gowan ordered his troops to split up, not expecting that one of their enemies' new abilities was the power to curve bullets. Despite scattering, each soldier was struck in the head. None could evade the attack, not even the captain himself. Seeing all of this, Karen was impressed and said, "Big brother looks so handsome in battle." After eliminating them all, the mutant cat spat out the remains, as they had no energy worth absorbing and tasted terrible. Zhang Yi remarked that although he tried to be peaceful, they had forced him to use violence. These greedy people attacked first, and they weren't even mutants. So they dug their own graves, he said. Karen couldn't help but exclaim how incredible Zhang Yi was, as they couldn't even lay a finger on him. After examining the bodies, Zhang Yi realized that he could now consider himself a highly skilled and experienced fighter. He was also curious about the serum they had used, a drug from the Xing base, something valuable for Zhou to research. If analyzed properly, it could prove useful in life-threatening situations. Additionally, he took the enemy's communication device and gained access to the Xing base's communication system. This was a precautionary measure. Zhang Yi explained to Karen that the base would not send reinforcements because they had lost contact with this group. The Xing base was 200 kilometers away from here, and they would likely abandon their men. Zhang Yi then stored all the corpses and vehicles in his dimensional space. Even if the Xing base sent a search team, they would never find out where their squad had disappeared. Now, they needed to quickly gather the necessary supplies and fortify their defenses. They had to prepare for the possibility of future war. He ordered the mutant cat to create an opening so they could enter. The giant feline shifted its form, smashing through the wall with its massive body, creating a hole large enough for them to pass through. They descended into the factory using ropes. Karen pointed out the items she wanted, and Zhang Yi stored them in his inventory. After collecting everything they needed, they returned to their vehicle and headed home. On the way, Zhang Yi sighed and said, "The war game will begin again." He then started planning his next move. Zhang Yi warned Ken not to tell anyone about their encounter with the Xing base. Confused, Ken asked why. Zhang Yi explained that this was something only they needed to know for now. He would ensure that no one left the base recklessly, but he also didn't want anyone else to interfere. Their focus should be solely on strengthening their defenses. In the end, everything would be secure. Zhang Yi knew exactly what he was doing, and Master Leanne would be pleased to hear it. He believed that now, the students in their base were safer than ever before.